This is part 2 in our series on Nietzsche's work, Daybreak. Check out part 1 if you haven't done so already. We discussed the significance of the title and Nietzsche's critique against the so-called Hinterwelt. Part 4, Materialism. Going even further in his campaign against the Hinterwelt, Nietzsche draws heavily upon the influence of German materialism back in the day. The amazing new discoveries made by the science of physiology sought to explain all human activity, even in morality and religion, as natural phenomena. That this is also Nietzsche's project is very apparent in section 119, in which he writes, "Our moral judgments and valuations are only images and fantasies concerning physiological processes unknown to us. All our so-called consciousness is more or less fantastic commentary of an unknown text, one which is perhaps unknowable, but yet felt." In Daybreak, Nietzsche has not yet taught up the concept of the will to power as an explanation for reality. But, having denied the existence of a Hinterwelt, these kind of materialist explanations are all that are left to Nietzsche, and indeed, to the philosopher of the future in general. The later, mature Nietzsche will expand on these ideas and come up with the will to power as the primary drive that guides human action. As yet, however, we find no mention of this will to power except in its seminal embryonic stages. This materialist lens will be Nietzsche's guiding compass throughout his subsequent works. And in reading Nietzsche, it's important to keep this in mind at all times. Both moral and religious attitudes, in Nietzsche's worldview, must stem from one base earthly drive. They cannot be otherwise. If they had come down to us from heaven, or through some kind of objective Platonic form, well, and there's that Hinterwelt again. In Daybreak, Nietzsche still struggles with completely doing away with the Hinterwelt. In later work, he is much more confident in denying it. Some might say he became more radical and less nuanced. Others might say that instead, he became more consistent in his thought, and he dared to think his own conclusions all the way through only later in life. Part 5. An assault on morality. Human agency. All of this boils down to the main argument in Daybreak, Nietzsche's assault on morality. You could say everything so far has led up to this. The title Daybreak or Dawn of a New Day. Doing away with the Hinterwelt as an explanation for reality and morals. Suggesting, instead, crude materialism as the cornerstone of our moral and religious existence. And, finally, challenging us to the task of creating a new morality. Daybreak is the book in which Nietzsche's assault on morality begins. He will continue assaulting it until the end of his life. But this book was the first major battle. In Daybreak, we see much of the familiar, mature Nietzsche, but in embryonic, still incomplete form. One of the ways in which he attacks traditional morality is by asserting that conscious intention is not the cause of a moral action. Actually, Nietzsche argues, we simply do not know what brings about human action exactly. Certainly not knowledge. Nietzsche calls this belief the greatest prejudice in morality, believed by men 2000 years ago and still believed today. That if you know how you should act, you will act accordingly. It would indeed be dreadful if the comprehension of the essence of a right action were not followed by that right action itself. This was the only manner in which these great men thought it necessary to demonstrate this idea. The contrary seemed to them to be inconceivable and mad. And, nevertheless, this contrary corresponds to the naked reality which has been demonstrated daily and hourly from time immemorial. Acts are never what they appear to us to be. We have taken great pains to learn that external things are not as they appear to us. Well, it is the same with internal phenomena. All moral acts are in reality something different. We cannot say anything more about them, and all acts are essentially unknown to us. Of course, in later works, Nietzsche will claim to know the origins of human action, the will to power. As yet, however, Nietzsche is all about exposing the age-old prejudice of the philosopher, the false belief that if you know what is good, you will automatically act in a good manner. In Daybreak, Nietzsche puts forward the idea that we as humans are creatures consisting of different drives, in constant opposition to one another. And we don't know which drives exactly. We don't know why one drive wins over another. We don't know where drives come from. We don't even know why some people have stronger drives than others, etc., etc. The Nietzsche of Daybreak believes human agency is an enigma for precisely this reason. Our understanding of morality is completely wrong, because to unravel this complex network of drives is simply impossible. We do not know ourselves well enough to be up to the task. Human action is, in essence, devoid of agency. When we choose to do something, we have not actually made a choice. Rather, we just see the victory of one drive over another. Let's illustrate with an example. My desire to go for a run is bigger than my desire to be lazy and stay at home. Therefore, I go for a run. In Nietzsche's view, there is no free will or free choice at play here. I didn't choose to prefer running over being lazy. It's just the outcome of the struggle between two drives. After the fact, my intellect will take sides, so to speak, and figure out reasons for why I made the right choice after all. I will tell myself, running is healthy, I did the right thing. But if I had chosen to be lazy instead, my intellect would have found justifications for that as well. It's raining today. I might catch a cold if I go for a run now. In the end, I have made the right choice to stay at home. Another example, just to see how deep this rabbit hole goes. I do not choose to eat an apple. My desire to not starve is simply winning from my desire to starve to death. I do not choose not to starve to death. I am born with this desire. In part 2 of our video series on Nietzsche's Beyond Good and Evil, we see that Nietzsche, by this point in his intellectual career, has posited the will to power as the primary drive of all human beings and everything that exists. However, in Daybreak, this insight is still missing. Part 6. An assault on morality. Custom. What is tradition? A higher authority, which is obeyed, not because it commands what is useful to us, but merely because it commands. Nietzsche's second attack on morality looks a lot like the ideas we will find later in On the Genealogy of Morals. Nietzsche offers us in Daybreak a kind of genealogical explanation for morality, which is familiar to anyone who has read the genealogy, yet the idea, as many are in Daybreak, is still in its beginning stages. Let's take a look where we're at right now. Nietzsche has stripped away the Hinterwelt, the non-material metaphysical substrate of reality, and has attacked and demolished our idea of human agency. This leaves a big problem. Where does morality come from? Why would I care about doing the good thing? When, according to Nietzsche, there is no heavenly reward waiting for me, as in Christianity. When there is no noumenal world from which morality derives, as in Kant. When the world is not the playground of an evil will, as in Schopenhauer. When, according to Nietzsche, I am just a product of competing drives, and I actually don't even choose to be moral at all. So where does it come from? Nietzsche's answer is tradition and custom. Nietzsche argues that the first morality was simply custom. Something was deemed good because it had been good in the past, and it has always been so. You learn from your parents that stealing is bad, who in turn learned the same from their grandparents, and so on. Nietzsche's main argument is the etymological connection between two German terms, Sittlichkeit, meaning morality, and Sitte, meaning custom. Nietzsche's hypothesis holds that simple custom and habit played the same role as rarefied and lofty moralities do today. That is to say, he offers a naturalistic account of the origins of morality. Morality was not born out of metaphysical concerns, with either the afterlife or a Platonic ideal in mind, but it was simply a way of doing things. Only later on, when humans started inventing philosophy and metaphysics, did the word morality come to mean what it means today. Some kind of lofty, grand, serious, big question in need of a profound answer. However, this immediately brings up the question, why would I care about tradition? Especially if said tradition is not actually based on anything. It's good because it's always been good is not much of an argument. The tradition remains alive, according to Nietzsche, because of a certain kind of submissive attitude towards it. And in what way can this feeling for tradition be distinguished from a general feeling of fear? It is the fear of a higher intelligence which commands, the fear of an incomprehensible power, of something that is more than personal. There is superstition in this fear. This submissive attitude is the big problem with a morality of custom, because in order to keep the system running, tradition must ensure people are sufficiently submissive, in other words, sufficiently fearful. You can see how Nietzsche will have a problem with this. The individual must not think he has the power to create new customs or traditions, as this would endanger the existing tradition. And remember, without tradition, there is no morality. So, individual ambitions must be held in check. Tradition ensures this will happen by making morality a group activity rather than an individual activity. A morality of custom requires you sacrifice your own individuality. Self-conquest is required, not by reason of its useful consequences for the individual, but that custom and tradition may appear to be dominant, in spite of all individual counter-desires and advantages. The individual shall sacrifice himself. So demands the morality of custom. This is the meat of the matter. Morality started out as custom and tradition, which required individuals to give up their individuality and conform to the group. And the system keeps itself in check by creating some kind of superstitious fear. A good example of this superstitious fear would be the common idea in mythological cultures that sickness is not the effect of a bacterial or viral infection, but a punishment from God. You have acted immorally, i.e., you have violated custom, therefore you have become sick. Lesson: don't violate custom in the future. This is the essence of Nietzsche's assault on morality. Nietzsche will seek to destroy this conception of morality and replace it with something else. Replace it with what? In Daybreak, at least, Nietzsche does not give us a definitive answer. Daybreak is the beginning of Nietzsche's assault on morality. He needs to destroy the old before we can create the new. He does tell us that our increasing scientific outlook, that is, our ever deeper understanding of cause and effect, will eventually do away with the morality of custom. As the sense of causality increases, so does the extent of the domain of morality decrease. For every time one has been able to grasp the necessary effects, and to conceive them as distinct from all incidentals and chance possibilities, post hoc, one has, at the same time, destroyed an enormous number of imaginary causalities, which had hitherto been believed in as the basis of morals. The real world is much smaller than the world of our imagination, and each time also one casts away a certain amount of one's anxiousness and coercion, and some of our reverence for the authority of custom is lost. Morality in general undergoes a diminution. All of this will eventually lead to one of Nietzsche's most famous proclamations, that God himself is dead, and that we have killed him. But we are not there yet. As it stands, Daybreak is the opening shot, the first exchange of hostilities in the conflict to come. Daybreak really is the dawn of a new day, the beginning. In later works, we will see just what that new day will bring. I went down into the deepest depths. I tunneled to the very bottom. I started to investigate and unearth an old faith which for thousands of years we philosophers used to build on as the safest of all foundations, which we built on again and again, although every previous structure fell in. I began to undermine our faith in morals. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this short series. If you want more content on Nietzsche, definitely let us know in the comments. For the moment, we are planning a full video on the will to power and also on the essays of the genealogy of morals. If this is something you'd enjoy, consider subscribing to the channel and clicking the bell button so you're notified when they are released. Again, thank you for watching and we'll see you in the next one.